Let me tell you about another area, and one that will really be the focus of our board meeting. We have a group of people in the department that cut across all different offices, and they are led by Aaron Espelt of the State Department of Education's Executive Director of School Design and Innovation. And there is a host of tireless and dedicated members of OSDE staff who have been working to develop a distance learning framework. And this is what our districts are going to need as they are looking through their own plans as we deliver distance learning in a different way than they have even delivered for those 200-some school districts that already have virtual learning. It will look a little differently without some of that face-to-face interaction. So distance learning frameworks and resources that we anticipate will be on the agency's website at sde.ok.gov by the end of the week. These are going to be the fruit of this labor. It will be a lot of material, but we believe these resources and guidance will be of real value for our schools navigating through this period. And Oklahoma has tremendous educators, strong and dedicated and smart. We have faith and confidence that our districts and teachers are committed to creative and innovative ways to continue learning for their students, and they will rise to the challenge. It's going to look different for all schools, and we have to accept that. Many districts long to have online tools and want to have resources to be able to hit the ground running. Some have them and some do not. So this is now an area where we will provide more support at the state level, and we are asking for support at the federal level to free up the use of some of our existing federal funds to be used to support distance learning. Other districts have little connectivity and communities with little or no access to computer technology. But again, we're working at the state level with those providers to work to ensure as much connectivity as possible in the coming weeks. This is far from ideal, but these are extraordinary situations for us, and we have never experienced this before. Speaking of extraordinary, it's the first time in history that we have had today a virtual state Board of Education meeting. It's emblematic of how we must adapt to the times to be able to continue to carry on the important work of education. Our education communities are tough, they're resilient, and they're committed. They know, as we all do, that we are all in this together. If this pandemic underscores anything, it is that we must help one another, we must care for one another, and we must love one another. And with that, we will begin considering what we can do at the state level to assist our schools in moving from a defensive posture, which was to take care of the safety of our children, our staff, and our communities by staying at home right now after spring break, after all that travel and this protected period of time, and also the nutrition and keeping our children healthy and their well-being top of mind in that defensive work that we are engaged in currently. And then I'm asking that we now move into offense. Let's keep learning happening, and let's move and ask that question and then implement what that answer will be to how do we keep our kids learning and growing, how do we continue, how do we make certain that we will not lose ground, that our children can keep momentum building. And this is what the next phase is about. All right, our next item is the discussion and possible action to amend the March 16, 2020 Order of Mandatory Statewide Cessation of Operations for the Public Schools of Oklahoma due to the coronavirus COVID-19 global pandemic. Mr. Clark.
Superintendent, members of the board, as reflected on the agenda and just read by Superintendent Hoffmeister. This item is to reconsider and possibly amend this board's March 16th, 2020 order that mandatorily ordered the cessation of operations in the public schools. Other provisions is provided therein. I believe that with the superintendent's opening comments, it is appropriate to open this up and consider amending that March 16th order. You do have a recommendation before you this morning as to the recommended modifications to that order, but at this time, we'll open it up for any discussion.
Yes,
questions.
I think that's very important. We would like to open that up for you to discuss, and those of you who I know have all been really wrestling with what is the right next step. We do know we have executive order in place, which calls on all of us to observe the CDC guidance with no more than 10 gathering at a time, and to implement social distancing as well, which came as we were in the middle of preparing for today's board meeting, as well, the governor's new executive order. But let's have a conversation about this, please.
First, I want to thank you and the State Department of Education because you have been very diligent in your leadership, and also Mr. Clark has spent countless hours in organizing and keeping the board informed, listening as you as well have done. But being that this is a historic meeting that's being done online, and just minutes before beginning the meeting, there were some amendments, or not, the recommendation was amended slightly. If you could read that recommendation in its entirety, so that way the entire board and everyone listening virtually could also understand what's in it.
Sure. Thank you. Very much appreciate that. The recommendation before you at this time reads as follows. Pursuant to the powers, authority, and duties vested by the Oklahoma Constitution and the State of Oklahoma, the Oklahoma State Board of Education hereby orders, effective immediately, the following. Suspend in-person instruction and extracurricular activities in closed buildings for the remainder of the school year, recommended ending date on or after May 8th through the 15th, 2020, for general student and personnel attendance. Exceptions authorized among public schools and their staff shall be those who are to provide nutrition services, essential core services. Examples include governance, HR, billing, maintenance, and continuity of building functions. Staff to maintain building access control and security measures, as well as student enrollment functions. Additional authorizations include staff for the purposes of facilitating or supporting required delivery of distance learning as set forth in more detail below. Secondly, now through April 6th, there's an established and dedicated window to do the following. Provide the Oklahoma State Department of Education with expedited waiver and assurances for each district, and prepare for and begin distance learning. Preparations may include immediately convening staff development consistent with the intent and purposes of this order. Third, in consideration of the waivers considered and potentially granted by the State Board of Education at this March 25th, 2020 special meeting, districts will provide the following assurances through the 2019-20 school year. Again, recommended ending date on or after May 8th through the 15th, 2020. Assurances include taking into account the needs and resources of each local community and the students' needs, develop and implement an approved distance learning plan. Districts who utilize the OSDE, State Department of Education's distance learning resources, will be expedited for review. Districts electing not to use the State Department of Education distance learning resources must develop a learning plan and submit the proposed framework to the State Department of Education for review and approval. Secondly, assurances include districts must complete and return the survey sent by the State Department of Education on March 24th, 2020, assessing the technology capacity of their staff and community, and report the results back in the manner and time frame determined by the State Department of Education. Third, districts must assure compliance with FERPA, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, including assuring that they have read and understand the most recent fact sheets and guidelines provided by federal and state agencies. Districts adhere and comply with CDC guidelines and apply a health and safety policy that ensures students, staff, and families are not exposed to potential pathogens that could lead to illness. Next, districts will continue to enroll all new students according to the state statute and school district enrollment policies, and provide educational plans for students that are new to the district for the duration of the school year. Districts will comply with the requirements stipulated in executive orders from the Office of the Governor of the State of Oklahoma. Turning to the awarding of credits, this is primarily a local function of school districts, but this board, as proposed, would encourage and recommend that districts utilize that flexibility so that students graduating in the class of 2020 or earlier, or who were on track to graduate before the gubernatorial declaration of emergency in March of 2020 and any subsequent amendments thereto, are not negatively impacted by measures taken by each local education agency or the state in response to the novel coronavirus, COVID-19. Consistent with the above, the State Board will consider waivers and flexibilities that are on the agenda this morning at the March 25th, 2020 special meeting, and to authorize the Oklahoma State Department of Education to grant these waivers for the duration of the school year as set forth above. Nothing in this order is intended to interfere with contracts between public schools and employees, and the staff of public schools are expected to carry out the terms and conditions of their contracts as entered into or later amended between the parties. In carrying out the terms of this order, the public schools shall adopt any policies or regulations necessary to comply with this order. And finally, this first amended order of the State Board of Education will be continuously monitored and updated accordingly.
Yes.
I move that we approve the recommended order for school closure for the remainder of the school year.
I second her motion.
All right, and any further discussion? We will have this order available very shortly for everyone to be able to see. And just a reminder that this order is the beginning of distance learning statewide so that learning can continue. All right, let's call the motion.
Ms. Hernandez?
Call the roll, excuse me.
Aye.
Mr. Bolenbach?
Aye.
Ms. Bradley Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Bobeck?
Aye.
Ms. Menning?
Aye.
Superintendent Hopewell?
Aye. All right, that motion carries. Thank you very much, board members, for that work.